Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelpline.org.au.
Simon told Helen wins a half length. Zach Benelli second.
Welcome to Greyhound Gossip.
Peaky Blinders start cheering for Tommy Shelby wins the WA Sprint Championship final.
Featuring Peter O'Neill and Leah Ernest.
Mozza moves up to Mermaid Manelli. Fab's Gem 3 deep. Here comes Fab's Gem.
Hard stole Rico by 5 lengths to Simon told Helen. Third Tommy Shelby.
This segment is dedicated to the discussion and promotion of greyhound racing.
Cindy's Oliver, Rockstar Patriot, Paul Stewart, back-to-back with Rockstar Patriot in the Galaxy.
Handsome Prince, a bolder clear. The former Tasmanian Handsome Prince has won the $1 million chase.
A very good morning, everyone. Tuned into Greyhound Gossip this Monday, and a very good morning to you, Peter O'Neill.
Good morning, Leah. What a wonderful weekend of greyhound racing we had, and I'm sure that you had a good weekend as well.
I did, and we had a big weekend of racing with the 2 heats of the Peter Thomas on Saturday.
We did. Some very good racing out there at Cannington. There were some good races over the distance as well, but the 2 heats of the Peter Thomas named after one of our great vets. The first one taken out by Firecloud. It was a really tight finish with Hinto rattling home on the inside to try to snatch the victory off. So Firecloud and Hinto through to the final. In fact, the first 4 making it through to next week's final. And then Runaway to Mars was too good, was the quickest qualifier from box number 1, defeating Dandelup Blazer. The box draw taking place, and the box draw I have got for you. Might be able to bring up the market layer. I've got the box draw here.
I've got the market as well if you want me to go through it.
Yeah, go through that. Sure.
So we've got box 1 Moment to Hustle at $8, box 2 Firecloud at $6, the 3 Runaway to Mars $4.20, in box 4 Beach Ridge at $3.20, box 5 Hinto $8, in the 6 Dandelup Blazer $5.50, box 7 Disco Daisy $10, and in the 8 Carter Axelrod 34 reserve runners of Rip and Tomahawk and Obstropolis. It's a pretty open field here, Pete, in the final.
It certainly is, but looking forward to what is going to be a very good final. And, of course, all eyes on the Peter Thomas on Saturday night here in Perth, but all eyes will be in Melbourne, of course, with the Nationals coming up. We start off with Hillsville on the Saturday morning, and on Saturday night we go to the Meadows with the National Sprint and Distance final. James Van de Maat's about to join us online. He'll be joining us in a few moments' time. And, of course, on Friday night, Leah, the naming of the Australian Greyhound of the Year at the Greyhound Club's Australia Gala Ball. It's going to be held in Melbourne, and we are looking forward to getting over to Melbourne this week and celebrating with the fraternity. It's been a tough 12 months for greyhound racing followers, and it's going to be a tough probably next 4 or 5 years as we look forward as well to greyhound racing and where we actually head. We spoke with Peter Howell a couple of weeks ago. Everything's going well with Mandurah, and we'll return to Mandurah later this year, and then the decision will be made on when we start the work on the new track down in the Peel region. And, of course, what happens with the track at Northam as well. And we go racing at Northam later on today. Is James with us now, Leah?
He is. We've got him now.
All right, just before we go to James, let's go back yesterday. Of course, James was at Hillsville warming up for the National Sprint final, straight course final coming up next Saturday. And we had the final of the Victorians.
Pretty quickly and showing good speed now. Cybertruck between them, that's Ivy's, then Quinlan Bale, Major Bomber. Well back at the end now, Cosmic Sin and Kelsey Bale. So Unleashed Kalinda takes the lead. He drew a length to maybe yesterday. Never ever doubt the king of straight racing, Unleashed Kalinda. He does it, and he does it in style by a half a length maybe yesterday. Third a photo, Quinlan Bale.
James, good morning to you. Peter O'Neill and also Leah Ernest with you in the studios of TAB Radio Racing and Sport in Western Australia. Good call yesterday, and Unleashed Kalinda, start number 50, was able to salute for Jason Thompson and races into next week's final.
Yes, hello to you guys. 100%, isn't he? And a phenomenal dog. And I was first to put my hand up after the race team and say I thought he might have just about been on the way out, Unleashed Kalinda. He's been a little bit vulnerable. We've seen some amazing clashes between he and maybe yesterday over the last sort of almost 12 months, I suppose. But up until about a fortnight, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 6 weeks ago, it was 7-0 to the advantage of Unleashed Kalinda. We all know that maybe yesterday was able to turn him over twice in the last month. So for the king of straight racing to bounce back, it was the perfect timing. And Jason Thompson's been renowned for being able to produce them at exactly the right time, and that's exactly what he did yesterday. So he's a contender. Maybe yesterday qualifies as well, and it's going to be an extraordinary day of racing throughout Hillsville, obviously the Meadows as well for the two nationals. I can't wait to see how the whole night plays out.
It's remarkable from a WA point of view. We don't have straight racing yet, and I'll get your thoughts on straight racing in a moment. But this greyhound's now won, I think, in excess of $180,000. I said that was his 50th start yesterday. He's now won 32, and 11 of those victories have come at Hillsville.
Yeah, look, the racing at Hillsville, or straight racing, I think as a whole, to be honest, is growing at an extraordinary level, because we've seen in the past, I think, Victorian greyhound racing for straight racing has been very dominant because it's probably the longest standing. We have seen a bit of racing at Capella for a while, but yeah, to see how strong the nation is, I suppose, now at straight track greyhound racing, it's becoming a really, I think, a prevalent sport, a prevalent part of the sport now, and to think that you can race for that kind of prize money in a straight line like Unleashed Kalinda has done, and yes, he's been able to win them on the circle, and same with maybe yesterday, but they're forging careers, earning extraordinary tip-top prize money racing in a straight line. And as you know, Pete, I've always been a massive fan of straight track racing. I started calling there, and I absolutely love it. And I tell you what, when you get a national series like the Straight Track Championship on your home deck at Hillsville, I think there's nothing more exciting.
James, you have just mentioned that you've been calling straight track racing for a while. What's the difference between calling a straight track as opposed to a normal 1 or 2 turn track?
Yeah, Leah, it's funny because a lot of people who go to Hillsville who haven't called there absolutely hate it because you are calling them. It's like the best way to put it for a thoroughbred person would be to say it's like calling the straight six at Flemington. They're coming at you, so it's very hard to line up who is actually in front. The more you call there, the more you start to understand the way the races are being ran and who's more likely to be in front. The other flip side is when they're running straight at you, you don't get a really good look at the colour of the rug. So especially if you get a bit of morning glare or something like that, or a bit of fog, as we can so often get up in the Yarra Valley in Victoria, it can be tricky to call there. But I was probably lucky in the sense that I started, I think, calling one race on a Saturday, I think it might have been back then, when I was about 13 or 14 for a can of Coke. So I've got about 17 or 18 years experience calling in a straight line now. So if I haven't worked it out by now, I probably never will.
Well, I hope your pay has gone up, James, from a can of Coke.
Oh, just slightly.
Slightly, 2 cans of Cokes.
Yeah, that's right.
You obviously called the Straight Track Championship on the weekend, and the favourite was maybe yesterday, Unleashed Kalinda, just nabbed it on the line. You mentioned that with the colours, it's a bit difficult coming past the straight as opposed to when they're running on a rounder track. You've also called Unleashed Kalinda winning about, I believe Unleashed Kalinda has got 2 of the track records now, the 300 and the 350. Did you call those races?
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm 90% sure, 99% sure I called the 300 metre track record, and I'm 97% sure I called the 350 metre track record. But to be honest, those 2 greyhounds have just been so far and above anything I think I've seen. There was a greyhound who raced a few years ago called Peter Gallo, who was probably the only one I think that, and he held the track record for a long time, that probably could have matched maybe yesterday in Unleashed Kalinda. But yeah, they just reel off those ridiculous times every single week. They get within half a length to a length of the track record on numerous occasions. So it's fairly easy when they're running that kind of time to actually almost forget what the track record is, because it just becomes another run for a very, very fast dog.
You've called both, obviously, the Bend and also the Straight, and we're talking about the Straight Nationals coming up on Saturday morning. Before we get your thoughts, do you think or are you in agreement that there's less interference on straight racing compared to those on a Bend?
Yeah, look, I know a lot of people say when they watch racing in a straight line that they can bump a little bit more at the start, but obviously it's a low impact at slow speed. So I think it's for welfare. It's very, very good. The other thing is on circle racing, we don't really get a head-on view of the start at too many tracks. So you don't actually see, like if you were to go to Shepparton 385, you'd often see them compress before the first corner, and then they start to find their position. So I think in that aspect, it's definitely it's similar to circle racing, but the real plus is the less added pressure, I suppose, on greyhounds going around the corner. And for example, there's a greyhound racing there by the name of Wild Alice. There's another one by the name of On a Mission. And for the case of On a Mission, she actually broke her leg as a puppy. would have maybe struggled to have made it to the racetrack. She's now had 7 starts up the straight for 7 wins. So it just sort of shows that there's endless possibilities. It's easier on the bodies. They probably can race for longer in a straight line, I feel, as well, because they're not running as far and obviously not putting as much pressure on their bodies. So there's plenty of upside to straight racing. I'm just waiting for WA to get one, Pete, and you can be the caller.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to calling straight racing at all, so hopefully I'm retired by then. But, yeah, we are talking about a straight track. Do you think we'll ever see more straight track racing in Australia? And do you think the prize money will go up? Because we don't seem to have, the turnover doesn't seem to be as high on straight racing, and correct me if I'm wrong, turnover doesn't seem to be as high as it is on a bend.
Yeah, look, I feel like, to be honest, the straight racing can be a little bit more predictable. And I know that sounds like a good thing, but it also can be a negative, because then if the favourites are consistently winning, there's probably going to be less turnover. And, for example, a greyhound like Unleashed Kalinda, who's got just a crazy strike rate up the straight, keeps on winning, where if he was to be on a circle, there's probably a higher risk of there being, you know, he misses it by half a length, so he's probably more of a chance to run into some early trouble. Therefore, it opens the race up for an outsider to get home. So I would probably suggest, from my opinion, that straight racing isn't necessarily the bookie's favourite, and that could also create a little bit of an issue turnover-wise. But, no, look, look, a lot of people that I speak to absolutely love straight racing, and there's a lot of people who effectively just pro-punt on straight-track racing. So, yeah, look, I think there's definitely a future, and a bright future for it. And I think, to be honest, Pete, as you said, I wouldn't be surprised if in 20 years from now we're sitting down having a chat saying that the biggest races in the game, some of them are up the straight. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right, now you called a few trials there as well on Sunday morning. A couple of raiders came down, I think, from Queensland and had a look at Hillsville.
Yeah, one in particular, Bye Bye Raider, so that's a nice little segue from you, Pete. Went 1934, solid performance, sports the blinkers. Went back through his history. He's had 2 marring offences, so he's a little bit of a risk, but he's clearly a greyhound with a big motor. He ran second in the state final in Queensland. But I had John Brash on my podcast, the Green Light On podcast, about a week ago, and my goodness, he pushed Valhalla really hard. And I went back, watched the Capella Bar win, thought it was good without being outstanding. The race sort of played into his hands. There was a bit of trouble up front, and he worked home to win it. But he went 19:15 first look, and it wasn't the overall time. It was the 12:40s run home time, which they just do not run first up. So he's suddenly gone right up my list of genuine chances in the race. And I will say, 6 weeks ago, I thought maybe yesterday an Unleashed Kalinda will smack the rest. And for everyone else who's coming to Melbourne, they're probably wasting their time. I feel like they're a little bit vulnerable at the moment, in particular Unleashed Kalinda. And to be honest, I may well have been a little bit disrespectful to some of these interstate greyhounds, because they have set the track alight in trials. So it's going to be a phenomenal day, phenomenal race. And yeah, look, there's no standouts. I know Unleashed Kalinda and maybe yesterday are going to be very short market-wise on their home deck. But I would not be surprised if a Valhalla, an Oscar Moses comes out and ends up getting the job done, and even Shall Not from New South Wales, who's a flying machine in a straight line.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing my first ever straight race live, so I'll be out there on Saturday morning, and I'll get to talk to you then, James. I know the box draws are later on tonight, so after what you said earlier on with the fog and everything, you frightened me off. But anyway, I might hide. Oh, great. I might hide and might be feeling the effects from the night before. But anyway, we'll see how we go. I might call the last 20 metres. We might be able to do you call the first part, and I'll call the last 20.
It's a good idea, that. We should try and get that over the line. That'd be good. A medley.
Yeah. All right. We'll see how we go. So have you got a tip before? I know it's hard, and I hate it when people ask me before a box draw, but have you got a tip for the straight? And then what are your thoughts on Postman Pat and the short price that he has come up with in the national sprint?
Yeah, look, I'm with Postman Pat. I think he's a phenomenal talent. We're actually about to record the box draw now in Victoria, so it'll be interesting to see where he does draw. But if he can draw near the fence, he's had 5 starts in his career, Postman Pat, from box 1. He's won 4 of them. The only defeat was at his second start at Ascot Park on the South Island of New Zealand when he was $1.10. So he's clearly a lot better greyhound now than he was back then. So if he happened to draw 1, 2 or 3, I'd almost go out and say he's near unbeatable. Ticker Norm did run a big race the other night. We know what Amron Boyer can do, and there's some class coming from interstate. But I think he's a once-in-a-10-year type of greyhound, I feel, Postman Pat. So if he's that good, he'll take care of this race, I think, with a bit of ease, especially if he draws a good draw. Zohar Bale in the stayers. I think Victoria couldn't be better represented in the sprint and the stayers and the straight as well. Look, I would not be surprised if Victoria dominate, but in saying that, Pete, I've gone through the recent figures on states that have been winning, and Victoria have struggled a little bit on the grand final day of the Nationals. So it's no sure thing, but I am tipping a clean sweep at this stage, but very, very much so box draw dependent.
Well, Peter Duncan will be happy that you're saying that because she loves the Victorians and doesn't like the other states coming across. But I can tell you, Sage Tennille has been, as a WA greyhound, trialled well there on Saturday night at the Meadows. Time was good and has been back from $51 into $9 with Tap Touch earlier in the week. So I know Postman Pat is a star, but if she gets clear running, she's got a big motor.
Yeah, looking very, very strong too. You've got the 600-metre form with Sage Tennille, so there's a big chance that if she was to be on speed, look, you can run Postman Pat down. He's not extremely strong, but in saying that, he's run at the Meadows last week to do it the hard way and still run home, I think, 12:07. That's the run home time of a 600-metre dog. So even though he's not explosively strong, I think he's a very, very hard dog to get past. If a Sage Tennille happened to get the right run through, or a couple of these other dogs, even a Raver's Army who's very strong, they definitely could give him a decent run for the money. But I just think if Postman Pat finds the lead on his home deck as well, he's going to be so hard to beat running quick time, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets down to 29.60, 29.50, and from there, if he can reel off his best first section, it could be game, set, match very early.
All right, mate. Good calling on Saturday. Thanks for joining us, and we will look forward to catching up with you over there on the weekend.
All good, Pete. Take it easy. Thank you. Good
on you. James Van de Maat joining us on Greyhound Gossip, and looking forward to seeing the first ever straight races there on Saturday. I've never seen a straight race live. Obviously, we watch it Capella Bar and also Healesville and the New South Wales and South Australian tracks on Sky Racing, but we'll be able to see it live there on Saturday, so that's going to be something new for me. Just before we're trying to get hold of Jason Thompson to talk about Postman Pat and also his representative in the straight. I heard the news over the weekend of the passing of Tony Forte. Tony was involved in greyhound racing for many, many years in Western Australia. Of course, in later years with the late John Carmody, he had some really great greyhounds that were able to race with John. In fact, they had a dog back in, I think it was 2015, the name escapes me at the moment, that went across to New South Wales and finished third in the national distance final after winning the WA distance final. And of course, early on, back in the 1970s and early 80s, David Hamer, who was a Hall of Fame trainer, he teamed up with Tony, and they had a couple of really smart greyhounds. Pearl King, who was the 1980 Greyhound of the Year, and Blue Echo won the 1984 WA Greyhound of the Year, and Blue Echo now in the Hall of Fame as well. So he'll be sadly missed, and his funeral is coming up on Wednesday at the church of, where's the church? It's at Mary's Cathedral in Victoria Square in Perth. So that's coming up 9:30 on Wednesday for those friends that want to go along and pay homage to him. What did you think of the final of the Victorian straight course there yesterday, Leah? You were in the studios of TAB Radio?
I was. We didn't broadcast it on TAB Radio, but I did have a watch. And, Pete, I thought it was really interesting, just as James said, that maybe yesterday had defeated Unleashed Kalinda, so that was probably the way he was leaning. But, watching the race, I thought, that's the way it's going to go. Probably the 8 to take out the win, but then Unleashed Kalinda took out the win right on the post. And it's interesting because, as we were just discussing earlier on as well, Pete, things like coming past the post and overtaking greyhounds or having any interference is not as likely on a straight track as it is with a bend. So for that to happen, I think it's more of a thrill with the straight track racing because it's not very expected. So I thought it was a really interesting race, and because we don't get it here in WA, Pete, it is quite unique to watch. So I thought it was an interesting race, and I'm excited for you to be there to watch one of the races live.
And also when we find out, and I'm surprised from Greyhound Clubs Australia that they haven't released who the candidates are for the Australian Greyhound of the Year. On Friday night we saw Wow She's Fast take out the Victorian Greyhound of the Year, and she's obviously one of the main contenders with She's a Pearl. There's a couple of contenders for the Australian Greyhound of the Year that'll be announced on Friday night at a gala function in Melbourne. Now, I know we've been trying to get hold of Jason Thompson. He's at trials at the moment, so we'll just try one more time. But it's interesting, Postman Pat is the short price favourite, was $1.65 with Tab Touch before they took the market down earlier on today. The box draw is about to take place, and as soon as we have that box draw, we'll pass it on to you later on today. But a greyhound that's got an incredible record. He's had 26 starts, 20 wins and 5 placings. He's won over $260,000 in stake money. And, of course, one of his recent losses was up in Queensland when he ran second in the Brisbane Cup behind Elite Machine. So will we have another WA greyhound in Sage Tenniel be able to topple him on Saturday night at the Meadows, Leah?
Look, I am a very strong advocate for WA, so I really think that Sage Tenniel has a chance, especially because there's such a wonderful story, a touching story there that Cody shared with us on the show last week and the week before, in fact. And I think that he's come such a far way with this greyhound, especially because he was willing to give this greyhound away for free, and to now have this trip of a lifetime going over to Melbourne to represent us. I know he was there, in fact, on the Sunday with the Thompsons. He posted a photo where Luke was on the dais with Unleashed Kalinda, so he's right into it, and I'm really excited, and I hope he gets a win, not just for WA, but because it's a very special greyhound, and I think that he's also named the greyhound after his daughter as well, so I think it would be a wonderful story coming out of that.
And it's also great for Cody to be able to go across there and represent Western Australia, as it is for the Credellis to go across there representing Ballistic Ant. Now, while Ballistic Ant might be, $50 or $100 chance, he's in the final, and just the opportunity to represent Western Australia, I think is fantastic. I'm not sure how many more years we'll have of the Nationals around Australia, whether there's still that strength and desire from all of the clubs, and they meet later this week to make those sort of decisions, whether we see the Nationals going forward. I know it's meant to be up in Queensland either. I think it's next year. And Johnny Brash has never called a Nationals, and he'd always want to do that. Just back to Saturday night, Leia, King Tommy was a really smart win over the 7:15 metres again. Defeated Couch Surfer. Time was good as well. Equal personal best, 41.84. And while the punters didn't actually see it on Sky Racing, and luckily we do have TAB radio where we don't miss races, we saw a really good clash between the brother and sister, West on Booney and Flying Frida. Flying Frida led early. West on Booney got into a little bit of trouble, but he levelled up with his sister going down the back straight last Saturday night over the 600 metres, and he went straight on by 34.62, which was a new personal best, a greyhound that won by 5 lengths. And while King Tommy's very, very smart, I think West on Booney, there's not going to be much between the two of them when they both step up, and I'm sure West on Booney will step up over the 700 metres in the near future as well.
Yeah, and I also think Flying Frida is another one to look out for, Pete. We've been following all of Tommy Shelby's pups recently, and they haven't been disappointing either. So, Chris Howes has quite a few of them, and I think they have a lot of luck here in WA, but also interstate. So it's a litter that we should be keeping our eye on.
All right. No Jason Thompson by the looks of things, and we do have. That's all right. We'll catch up with him when we go over there on the East Coast. The box draw for the sprint and distance final, and also the straight course final, taking place in Victoria a little bit later on today, so that will be up later today. We have greyhound racing at Northam. First gets underway at 1:34 this afternoon, so I'm about to head up to the Avon Valley through the canola fields, and I'll bring you a preview around 15 minutes prior to the first layer.
Wonderful. And when will you be heading over to Melbourne, Pete?
Heading off on Wednesday, we fly across. So there's a couple of functions earlier in the week, and then the Greyhound of the Year function on Friday night. Out to Hillsville on Saturday. After what James said earlier on this morning, I'm not really sure whether I want to try calling a straight race. I think I might just sit in the stands, and then to the Meadows on Saturday night. So looking forward to that.
Wonderful. And we will be having Greyhound Gossip on the Monday. Very likely we'll just have you over the phone to discuss all the action from the weekend.
Hopefully. I do have a flight. I have to check my flight details, but hopefully we'll have Greyhound Gossip next week. Looking forward to what is going to be a big week when all of the states and also New Zealand go head-to-head. So good luck to the West Aussies.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to it. Thanks, Pete. A quick break before we get into race day.